headaches, nausea, energy loss, inability to sleep. All these symptoms are not normal, but yet, oh, that's what it takes to be an entrepreneur. That's what it looks like to be 35. That's what it looks like to be 50. That's what 60 looks like. All these lies, we've normalized the dysfunction. And the longer that we stay there, the faster that all of a sudden some type of episode happens. Do you feel optimally energized? Do you feel like you're mentally clear all the time? Do you feel like you sleep deeply? The answer is probably no. There's probably some areas that you've just accepted as normal because this is just what I have to go through.
Thriving in Tandem. It's a podcast for you, the married entrepreneur that wants to win in business and marriage at the same time.
Welcome to Thriving in Tandem.
All right, so honey, today we're going to talk about becoming a higher performing owner, husband and wife.
Ooh, this is going to be good.
And we're going to dig into an area that we touch upon it, but we've never had a guest that can really dig deep into the health part of us, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually as well. But how that's such a foundation of being a better business owner, a better spouse, a better parent, right?
And it's so important in our day-to-day life.
And I want to make sure before you sign off, because sometimes, especially once you start talking about health, people sometimes roll their eyes back. And it's going to be some new diet or some
new fad,
some really totally intense exercise routine or something like that.
Extreme.
But what I love about, as we talk with Justin and Alyse here, is that, especially because we read the book, but it's very highly practical, but it's all about customizing your health journey for what fits you.
Yeah, I love it. It's not a one size fits all, and we're all trying to get into that box.
Yeah, and it's something I'm looking like, yeah, I can do that. Because you're expecting, you got one diet after another and one exercise after another, right? So, and then they never last, right?
Do they work? No.
Right, exactly. Well, they work when you're doing it.
Yeah.
But anyways, so we're so excited to have Justin Roethlingshoefer. Oh, I had it right before we recorded, and all of a sudden when the pressure's on, the lights are on, right? Roethlingshoefer and Alyse Gaulin with us today to really talk about this and dig in. Justin and Alyse, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. We're so happy to be here.
Yeah, it's so great to be here with you both.
Yeah, and so this is a power couple. I mean, they're working together in business, but Justin, has his master's in sports performance and human biology, and he's a performance coach and director for the NHL and NCAA teams. So
wow.
He's got comes from a wealth and working out experience. He's definitely got a breadth of experience there. Also TEDx speaker and host of 2 podcasts, Sports Science and Recovery, and then the Own It Show. And then also authored a number of books, including the one I have right here. Right?
Which that's an interesting story how we got that book.
Yeah, The Power of Ownership, Redeem Your Health, Live Life by Design, and Break the Relentless Pursuit of Normal. Yeah, so I got this book just randomly in the mail.
At our house, it just showed up.
What I thought was random. But it wasn't random, but all of a sudden I get this book and I'm like, okay, I know I didn't order this on Amazon.
And I'm looking to see if it's a gift because I want to thank whoever sent it. But there's no card, no nothing, just the book and the envelope.
I did notice on the return envelope, on the return address, it said U.S. Christian Chamber of Commerce. And so I said, oh, okay, they must be having a speaker because we're members of them. And I know every time they have a speaker, like a webinar, that if they have a book, then they get sent out to those that registered. So I said, oh, okay. And then.
So thank you for the book.
We had Tamara Andrus, a mutual friend, Tamara Andrus, on our show, and then you asked who would be a good fit for the show.
Yeah.
And so
because I love meeting new people. She
brought up your name and then did the email introduction and then had the last name. And I'm looking at the last name going, that sounds familiar. It's not Smith, right? So it's it sticks out, right? And so I'm like, oh, I think I got the book. So I said, okay, then I guess we have to have him on the show. So that was fun. And his wife, Alyse, definitely a powerhouse on her own. She's currently the CEO of their coaching company, Own It Coaching. But before that, she grew up as an entrepreneur and, really helped grow multi-billion-dollar corporations in the retail industry. But most recently, for all you women listening, was executive at Christian Louboutin. And if you're not familiar with that brand, one of those high-end fashion brands known for the shoes.
One can never have too many shoes.
And question maybe Alyse can answer, why is it that men design women's shoes? Why does it seem like it's mainly men that design women's shoes? But anyways, So she obviously comes from a major background in business, and now Justin and Alyse get to work together. So anyways, that's a little bit about them and their background and how they're going to be able to speak well into this health journey and making sure that you're performing well, not just in business, but every other aspect of life, and how important that is. And they can definitely speak to that because they're doing it, right? So Justin and Alyse, again, welcome to the show, and let's just dig into it. As I'm read the book, obviously in the beginning, you talk about the fact that, in the intro, right, you're thinking, even if not seeing you on YouTube, but they just imagine this pretty chiseled, athlete looking guy, right? And you're a high performer as far as physically and all that. But at a young age, things didn't go well, right? Even though you're taking care of yourself physically and probably eating well as well, but something happened and didn't go well.
Yeah, I think for me, it was like, I always come back to the sentiment of when you've got a calling on your life, when you have a purpose, and the Lord's blessed you with something, the enemy's going to try to detract you, take you away, give you obstacles, give you challenges, give you things that are going to want to hold you back and not actually see them come to fruition. And so I grew up a fat kid, made fun of all the time, teased all the time, left out of a lot of things, but had a athletic gifting that just allowed me to excel in sports. And so as that couldn't hold me back, couldn't deter me from loving athletics, loving health, loving just learning about this. We went the other way and developed a deep fear of body composition issues and how I looked, and went down the anorexia road for about 7 or 8 years. And it was really tough, and created a lot of, went through depression, anxiety, and a lot of these things that are very common and commonplace that people don't talk about. And so I feel like that was a major part of my story over the course of, let's call it 21 years, that really helped shape me and have empathy for people who are hopeless or have a lot of hope deferred, if that makes sense, in the sense of what health feels like, what feeling energized feels like, what sleeping deeply feels like, what feeling confident in your body feels like, so that you can go and do what it is that you are truly called to do. And I was fortunate at 18 years old. I had a coach that just really poured into me and helped me to go through a lot of this healing process over the course of then my educational career, getting my master's degree and just pouring into people in different ways, and that becoming my career. Was able just to see things through a different lens that I think a lot of other people struggle to see, which is why we can now speak to people, I think, in just a very different, personalized, and data-driven approach. So it's not just this broad brushstroke, hey, this is what you need to do from a sleep standpoint or an exercise standpoint or a stress management standpoint, but really learning, what does your life look like? What is the data telling us? How can this help us get a better direction so that we can ultimately have some type of metric to make sure that's guiding us in the direction in which we're going, so that you can get the results that you deserve.
Yeah, so you're talking very comprehensive, right? It's not just the physical exercise and all that stuff, but what happened, to get you to look at this thing holistically as opposed to just, the exercise and the
trying to lose weight.
Yeah, so I think, the biggest thing is there was a multitude of different things. So obviously understanding that as a fit kid, like training and doing all of these things were great, I still didn't feel healthy. I didn't feel well. I had all this anxiety. I was depressed a lot of the time. And then as I stepped into the NHL and started to just have this comprehensive solution for these players, from looking at the blood work, looking at the data, understanding habit structures, understanding the behaviors, looking at recovery, knowing that we're not overtrained 99% of the time, we're just under recovered. And that was a major piece that we needed to lean into. I just continued to live this life where I was in charge of managing the health, wellness, and performance of some of the best athletes in the world, some of the most expensive athletes in the world, if you could say. And I was failing to do it for myself. And so even though I looked the part, even though I was winning world championships in High Rocks games and similar to CrossFit games and running triathlons, and just looking well on the outside. On the inside, I was a disaster. And it got to the point where I had a precancerous diagnosis of polyps in my colon and an ulcer in my stomach that was told I wouldn't see 35. And at that point, it really hit home that this isn't an athlete problem, but a human problem. And quite often, or even more specifically, a human problem for leaders, business leaders, entrepreneurs, people who are really pushing and striving for a mission. And it was at that point that that I knew there was something much bigger and a bigger calling that we were needing to step into.
And then that diagnosis, and I think, you kind of recount down the book, like I think you like passed out in the middle of a workout or something, like, right? Isn't that something?
Yeah, so Alyse and I were actually in Chicago, and was in a hotel working out together, and I had not been well for a while. Like, I had gone to all your docs, functional medicine doc, regular docs. They'd pulled all my blood work. They'd done all the fancy expensive tests. They'd given me all the supplements. Do you remember we went to Hawaii?
I had a whole suitcase of just supplements. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
It just was given like all the worldly solutions and non-holistic solutions, and nothing was working. I was actually noticing just constant regression. Wow. And I was in the hotel and picked up some dumbbells, and all of a sudden,
after not having eaten for 2 days because you couldn't eat.
It was smoothies and soups.
Yeah.
Smoothies and soups is pretty much what I was at.
This was a particularly bad patch where you couldn't eat.
Yeah. Wow. It had been terrible. And picked up the dumbbells, and the room started to spin, and down I went. And next thing I remember was Alyse picking me up and laying me down and just saying, "Hey, wait, we gotta do something different here, because this is not normal." Even though all the docs and everybody around you are telling you that things are good, they're actually not.
And how old were you?
Yeah.
So how was that for you, Alyse? Like, to go through something like that? I mean, like, because you're not a doctor, and you're like, oh my gosh, and just seeing him deteriorating like that.
Yeah, it was hard. It was really hard to watch. And I think, Justin knows a lot more about health at that time than I do. And so I just trusted what the process that he was going through and the journey that he was going through. And, like he said, he was trying to go much more of a holistic route, a holistic path, because it's what we believe. It's what our company is built on. And, there were a lot of good things that he found out, but at the end of the day, I just looked at him and I was like, we can't keep going through these cycles. We got to try something different. Mm-hmm. So, that's where I got a little bit more involved in the process, and we finally got to a place where he was able to get a diagnosis and some healing. And
I think what Alyse even comes back to when she says like this holistic side, it's the worldly holistic side, where it's, hey, here's a gut biome test, and here's your supplements that go with it. Mm-hmm. Here's the blood testing, and hey, we've got your program already written for you before you did the testing anyways. And right. It's like, how can we get you through? How can we get as many people through? How can we scale this as big as possible, as fast as possible? And there really is no personalization or understanding. Hey, maybe each person is different. Each person is unique. Each person does need something slightly adjusted based off of their lifestyle, their experience, what they've been through, what they've gone through, what their desires are. And that just didn't exist. And because we continued to try that road, it led to what I had to go through in order to step in to create something different.
Yeah. So this is important to note, right? You're 29 years old. Both of you, peak of health, growing careers, business, and all that. Because I'd imagine, Alyse, at that time you're an executive, you're in the retail space or in the corporation, right? So, you're obviously building your career. We don't think, especially when you're younger, right? We think we can do it all and just go at it and grind it out. Now, you had a physical wake-up call, but sometimes people may not have any official diagnosis of anything, whether it's heart disease or cancer or whatever in your case, but our body's still breaking down, right? Even at a young age, we just don't realize it. So speak to that a little bit about like, how do you wake up the younger folks and even some of the older folks that still think they're 20, right?
So I think a multitude of ways. Number one is we've normalized dysfunction, headaches, nausea, energy loss, inability to sleep. All these symptoms are not normal, but yet, oh, that's what it takes to be an entrepreneur. That's what it looks like to be 35. That's what it looks like to be 50. That's what 60 looks like. All these lies, we've normalized the dysfunction. And the longer that we stay there, the faster that all of a sudden some type of episode happens. And I think even as we've constantly iterated on how we message, what we do, how we do it, and who we help, it's not about extending your life. Yes, that's what our goal is, but people don't buy extending their life because they're like, oh, I'm good. But it's the symptoms that you feel today. If I was to say to you, Robert or Kaylee, what do you feel on a day-to-day basis? Do you feel optimally energized? Do you feel like you're mentally clear all the time? Do you feel like you sleep deeply? The answer is probably no. There's probably some areas that you've just accepted as normal because this is just what I have to go through. And that acceptance is where it drives us in this negative direction. Because going back to the comment I said, I don't believe we're overtrained, we're under-recovered. I talked about that a lot in athletics. We would train you. We're not overtraining you. You just aren't recovering enough. So we have to focus on what does this look like. It's the same thing. There's a cost to being an athlete. There's certain things that being in that role are going to cost you that we have to remedy and fix in order to make sure that you can come back faster, stronger, more recovered, and able to perform again the next day. Well, in business, as business leaders, as entrepreneurs, there's a cost to leadership. There's a cost to business. And it comes at the extent of where our remedy is a vacation once a year, a massage once a month, a gym membership. But that remedy does not equate to being an adequate solution to the cost of what's being asked of us day in and day out. And so the consequence is all of these symptoms. And because we don't see ourselves as athletes, we're like, oh, that's just what it takes to be an entrepreneur. That's just what it looks like to be in business. That's what it looks like to be married. That's what it looks like to turn 50. But that normalization is what's causing the downward and continual degradation of the health of our country, especially of those in the 1% who I call the leaders of the country, the people like you, the people like me, the people who continue to say, hey, I'm going to go on a mission and impact the world in a positive way.
Yeah. No, that's good. I love that normalized dysfunction. And it's so true. It's like all these little things and little signs, right? We just kind of poo off, especially when you're younger, because you can just power through, or at least we think we can. And those things are just adding up.
It catches up with you. And
I also love what you guys talk about, total health relies on the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. And, I just kind of recently said this in one of our talks is that, yeah, if any one of those 4 areas is broken or not optimal, it affects everything else. Mm-hmm. Right. And so you got to look at all 4 of those. And so at least kind of speak to that because, you can be physically fit and all that, but if one area is just got a kink in it, there's like a domino effect, right?
Or you can look physically fit, but that doesn't mean internally you're fit and you're healthy.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a great question. And it's one of the reasons why when we started to build our business, we were really thinking long and hard about what does it mean to be truly healthy in today's day and age? And it isn't just about physical, right? I think that's oftentimes what the worldly definition of health is. Mm-hmm. But when we sat down, we were like, it's healthy in all areas, right? It's really bringing all of those into under one umbrella and having what we call a health executive team being able to oversee all of those areas, because that's where true health sits, is at the intersection of all of those 4 areas. So, mm-hmm. We have a lot of people come in and work with us and they think, this is just about the physical, but it's not. It's really about the mindset that you have, making sure that you have emotional health, and most importantly, making sure that you have spiritual health, right? Connection to your creator. So that's something that is really, really important for us, is being able to bring all of that together so that you can see true health on the other side. The interesting thing is our body is constantly processing all of these different types of stress. So you could have somebody who's training for a marathon and running, 10, 14, 18-mile runs. And you could also, on the other hand, have somebody who's going through loss of a loved one or a divorce or sale of a company or something really emotionally and mentally stressful. And our body recognizes that stress as the same thing. So we have to make sure that if you're undergoing one of those spiritual, mental, or emotional states of stress, that your physical is that much stronger and your resiliency is that much greater so that you can take on that stress. Because like Justin spoke about, even the day-to-day managing a business starts to erode and degrade some of those other areas of stress, like the mental and the emotional. And so we have to make sure that we come around you, and everybody should have support in all of those areas to make sure that you're the healthiest version of yourself.
Yeah, because as I was reading the book, and as you're saying, Alyse and Justin, as you guys were sharing, it seems like the common denominator is stress. It's almost like really managing stress. And these are different areas of your life that can cause stress, and we got to manage those. Because I remember there's like an aha moment for me in the book when you're talking about even some of these diets that people are on. They could be good diets, but then just trying to stay on that causes stress. Right? So speak to that a little bit.
Well, here's the funny thing about even a lot of these diet systems, and let's just say, let's be honest. At the end of the day, whether you're talking paleo, keto, Mediterranean, gosh, you name pescatarian, you name it, vegetarian. At the end of the day, they're an elimination diet. They're eliminating something from what you're eating on a regular basis. And so when somebody goes from eating whatever they're wanting and they don't feel well, they have something going on internally, as soon as you cut something out, and let's just say somebody goes to keto, so you're eating high protein, high fat. Well, a lot of the refined sugars, a lot of the carbohydrates that maybe you've been eating that were not actually making you feel great internally, you've now eliminated. So short term, you feel great because you're no longer having the inflammatory responses internally, or you're not having any of the disruption of the gut biome that was there. But what you've done is now you've cut out a lot of the nutrients that you were getting from other things that aren't within keto and paleo that your body actually responds really well to. Some of the vegetables, some of the fruits, all these things that your body was like loving and craving. And now long term, you start to feel bad again. You don't feel well. You feel a lack of energy. Your skin starts to have some issues. Your nails start to be brittle. Your mental fog or your brain fog starts to come back. That is what we're seeing from a lot of people, is because they're just going with something that's so generalized and sustaining something long term. It's creating constant internal stress on your body that you're just unaware of, but your body keeps track of everything. Your body keeps the score. And the stress that we're talking about is not the pull your hair out stress, the stuff you're conscious and aware of. It's a lot of the things that you're unaware of, the breathing of air, the digestion of food, the having conversations like this. As you're listening to this podcast, that is another stressor. Your body's taking in information, processing it, helping you understand it, and now having some type of emotional reactions to it. These are all things that your body's having to adapt to that we completely underestimate and forget that our body just does until it doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, I think too, it's got to be stressful on our bodies to try and be on this diet or eating plan that's like really not sustainable forever. Like,
it's sustainable and might not actually be what your body needs physically. Right. So as Justin was talking about, as you're removing certain nutrients from your body, it could be physically depleting the energy that your cells need to produce the energy that you need to wake up every single morning. So without really being able to scientifically understand what your body needs, it's kind of like you're taking a shot in the dark and saying, hey, I think I'm going to do this because I heard this influencer or this podcast say this and they recommended it and it worked for them. But what could be working for somebody could actually really be hurting you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think this is a good segue to kind of talk about the 4 pillars of ownership that you talk about in the book. And then, because it is very holistic and it addresses all the issues that you're talking about. So speak to that a little bit. What's the 4 pillars of ownership, and how do you practically manage that?
Yeah, so the best way that I can describe this, at least did a great job in kind of helping framework this out, especially for the entrepreneur, the business owner, is in your business, you have these three different sections, right? You have KPIs that help you understand the health of your business, help you understand what you're actually looking at, what's going on, something we can tangibly measure to say, hey, are we improving or do we need to redirect our attention? So KPIs is one. What you're talking about with the four pillars, that's where we get into the concept of business divisions. Like you have a CEO, you have marketing, you have HR, you have operations. You have these areas so that you still are the CEO, but you have this support network around you that you're able to pick and choose certain habits around that are important that you need to oversee and that you need to implement in order to function. And then lastly, you have strategy. Because if there's all of these people acting independently of one another, but not unified in a strategy of what the mission, vision, values, and direction of the company's going, the company's not going to succeed. And so we took that same approach with your health and being able to help people understand and see why this is so important. So the KPIs, we talked about a couple of them, but HRV is a great number to manage stress off of, to understand how our body's actually handling stress. Then you've got your four pillars of ownership, which are build, renew, repair, and fuel. And in each one of those, there's certain habit sets. Like in build, are we getting 10,000 steps a day? Are we having 3 to 4 days of weight training every single week? Are we getting our heart rate above 80% for 20 minutes a week? Are we doing 2 hours of zone 2 training per week? Do we get outside for 45 minutes every single day? Then we go to fuel. Okay, looking at nutrition and hydration. Are we getting 3 square meals in a day? Are we portion controlled? Do we have wait 3 hours to eat our first meal? Do we stop eating 3 hours before bed? Do we take a 5-minute walk after every meal to regulate blood glucose? Do we get half our body weight in ounces of water in every day? These are all great tools within those 4 pillars. But then strategically, what does a unique playbook look like for Robert and Kaylee? Because you'll both need different things. You need all the constructs of what exists in those 4 pillars. You know that. Nothing I said there, somebody was like, oh no, you don't need to portion control your food. You can eat whatever you want, when you want, however much of it you want. Well, nobody said that ever. But what ends up happening is, okay, what does it look like from a timing standpoint? Robert maybe loves to work out first thing in the morning. So breakfast is going to have to maybe look different than what it's going to look like for Kaylee, because Kaylee likes to do her workout later in the afternoon. Well, we start to framework this strategically, and then the data validates that what we chose to do for Robert was actually working. So let's double, triple down on that. Or it redirects us because we're not seeing the improvements that we need, so that we're actually now going to start to readjust the playbooks. But until you have that system, that structure, as Alyse said, it's just throwing darts in the dark and really just guessing.
Yeah. No, that's good. And so I think some people will go all in on the fuel and build part, right? The eating right, count their calories or whatever, and then exercise and all that. But Alyse, talk about the renew and repair part. Because that seems to be the gap for most people. They don't really, and Justin, you kind of spoke to this a little bit with these high performing athletes, right? We can train you and all that, but the renew and repair part is probably just as important, if not maybe more so, just because that's a big gap for most people. So speak to that a little bit, Alyse.
Yeah, I love how you say it's a big gap, because it absolutely is, because culturally within our society today, we are a performance and achievement culture. So many people out there wear lack of sleep or stress as a badge of honor. Mm-hmm. But it could not be further from the truth.
Yeah.
Our health is predicated on the quality of sleep that we're getting. It's predicated on how often we're meditating or doing breath work. It's predicated on how often we're getting outside and going for a walk and connecting with God, right? All of these things impact our health. And again, as I was talking about earlier, when you ignore or deprioritize the repair and renew sections, which is all about sleep, it's all about self-care, it's all about your immune function, right? It's these areas that so often get left behind, then our health, without even knowing it, starts to deteriorate as well.
Yeah. So,
well, and I hear that a lot with the entrepreneurs. Oh, we don't have time for that. I only sleep 3 hours a night, because I got so much to do and I don't need any more sleep. Me personally, I got to have 8 hours. Otherwise, I'm no fun to be around. But,
Me too.
so,
yeah. And so I think, these are all great, right? People are nodding their head and all that. Getting someone to take action, right? To getting our listener to take action on some of these things. What are some, just talk about sleep, for example, because that's an area, right? That's probably a gap for most entrepreneurs. Like one of the most common things I hear, especially because a lot of entrepreneurs, they love what they're doing. They say, it's not work. I can go all day, all night. I don't need sleep because I just love what I do. I just got to keep going. What's one, what's one way you can virtually shake them up? Let's say you need to get your rest. You need to take care of yourself. What's both of you, one Justin and then Alyse, what would you say to that?
So there's a few things. First is I always like to show, not tell, which is why I love to show the data. Yeah. Is the moment that you see, wow, I get 18% of my total sleep time in REM or slow wave sleep, which is actually the restorative sleep, which is actually the sleep that is helping me mentally and physically recover. And we should actually be around 40 to 50%. So you're telling me that I'm far off from where I should be. It again triggers a lot of these type A mentalities in entrepreneurs that are like, wow, there's a massive gap here. Because you tell somebody, hey, you should get more sleep. Well, I only know what 3 and 4 hours or 5 hours of sleep feels like. Right. And I can function on that. Well, you've normalized dysfunction. You've normalized the feeling of exhaustion. You've normalized the feeling of fatigue. You've normalized the feeling of brain fog because that's what you've had to do. That's what you've had to overcome in order to be successful. And so if you don't feel that, it's like, I'm going to lose my success. And so that's why there's such a mindset component to this in where we have to actually start to trigger people. So number one is data. Data allows us to actually see what's there and helps us to truly understand that. The second thing is getting people to visualize what they actually see their health as. Because if I was to ask you, Robert, I'll just ask you right away. Give me an answer off the cuff, and Kaylee, you as well. If you were to describe in a sentence what the vision of your health looks like, what would you say?
Well, probably because first thing comes to mind, because we're planning this trip to Cinque Terre to Italy, is just being able to walk all 5 through all 5 cities in a day and feel just rejuvenated when I'm sitting down for dinner with a little, with a pasta dish and a glass of wine. I just
have to say, I think that is one of my favorite experiences I've ever had in my life. And I did it with 101 degree fever. So it was
oh my gosh.
All right. Well,
I don't want that.
It's amazing. I know. It was still amazing.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. We'll have to pick your brain about.
Yes. Well, no, I would totally agree because that's on my bucket list. I've always wanted to go there. I have it on my vision board, and just being able to walk to the 5 different villages, be in great health, be able to get up in the morning, feel fabulous, eat the foods that I want, and just be clear in my mind and present in the moment. That's kind of what comes to my mind, just to be able to enjoy.
Great. So if I was to kind of like build both of those into like one vision, it's for as long as possible, be able to do what I want, when I want, and have freedom and not have my health hold me back from anything.
Right.
Pretty much.
So if I was to ask you today, based off how you're operating, what you're doing, the wisdom and knowledge that you have, do you feel like with a guarantee, do you feel like without a hitch that you could say, I'm on the right track?
No, I can always see it, especially after reading your book, getting convicted. It's like, 10, 15 years from now, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to do something different to make sure I maintain, like, just today, right? I'm already starting to feel some aches and pains, those little things, right? Normalize dysfunction. So
you just said something I don't want the listeners to miss this. You said, you know what, 10 to 15 years from now, I know I'm going to have to do something different. But then you went back and you said, well, I'm already starting to feel some aches and pains. Right. It's like, well, why accept that as normal? Why accept that as okay? Why, if you're concerned what's happening 10 to 15 years from now, would you not want to feel even better than you are today. If you're operating at 50 to 60% of what you truly could be today, imagine the impact that you could have if you were operating at 70, 80, or 90%. Imagine the other impact. And how I come back to that as an entrepreneur, like how selfish that you could impact more people, have a greater impact on people, and seek more abundance just by changing some of the habits and behaviors, not that you don't want to, just that you're unaware of. And so those are the things that I would do to shake them, to help them see it. And so number one is data. Number two is mindset shifting.
That's good. All right, Alyse, you got the last words. What would you say to the entrepreneur? How do we get them to say, let's take the next step? And especially, and definitely get the book. I mean, there's very practical things in here. So Alyse, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I think the biggest way that I can help describe it is through my own story. I was that burnt out executive when I was working at Louboutin. I was on, 7-8 planes a month. I was back and forth to Paris, and these were long trips. Like I was back and forth to Paris every other month. My region was all of North and South America. So I was in Mexico, I was in Canada, I was in South America. I was all over the place, right? I was
6-8 hour time zone changes.
Right.
That's a region. That's half the world.
I was traveling a lot. I would have 4 or 5 cups of coffee in the morning. I wouldn't eat my first meal until 1 or 2 p.m. in the afternoon because I would just let the coffee fuel me all morning. And I could feel that my energy was borrowed. It wasn't real. It wasn't natural. And I was very, very quickly approaching a state of burnout. And then it wasn't until I totally started to get clear. And like Justin said, it was by looking at my data first, generating that awareness, right? One of the things I like to say is if we don't have awareness, we don't have anything. We have nothing to create change from. So the first piece for me was really to dive in and understand what my data was actually telling me. My HRV at the age of, I started to do this around 29, 30. My HRV was in the low 20s. For somebody my age, I should be in the 45 to 55. Right now, I'm steady, like between 50, 53. That is my baseline HRV now. But it's taken years for me to build that, for me to really get to that place where I have a healthy HRV. And so being able to not only look at my data and see the growth along the way, but have a full system of what I knew was working for me in my body, based off of science, based off of data in a very unique way. I now wake up every single morning with the natural energy that I need to get through the day. No longer do I have that afternoon slump. I have a caffeine curfew. I'm not drinking caffeine after 10 a.m. in the morning. Right now I'm sipping on decaf coffee because I just love a lot of your
coffees are decaf.
A lot. Yeah. I limit myself to 1 cup of caffeinated coffee a day. And I feel totally different. I feel younger than when I was in my late 20s. I actually went to the doctor because I was feeling tired. And she said, "Oh, it's just because this is what happens when you're that age." And I was like, I refused to accept it. I was like, there's no way. Like
you're 30.
I feel tired every day. I feel tired every day. And now it's polar opposite. I wake up with the energy I need to get through every single day.
Awesome.
And I also know that in doing that, I'm putting health chips in the bank every single day. It's like your 401k. I'm putting health chips in the bank every single day, building my future health longevity.
Awesome. So definitely got to get a hold of Justin and Alyse. Links are in the show notes, but there's ownitcoaching.com and then Alyse's personal site, AlyseGaulin.com. And of course the book, The Power of Ownership, book.com. How else can people get in touch with you if they want to not just learn more, but actually do more for their life, for their health?
Yeah, I think those are the 3 best spots. To be honest, ownitcoaching.com is just where you want to go. You've got all your resources there. It links out to everything. It's going to give you all the information you need. You'll have links to the podcast. You'll have links to the book. You'll have links to the personal sites. Everything is there so that you can really understand how we could step in and start to serve and help you in the best way possible.
Awesome. Well, Justin and Alyse, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
We can go on for a while because,
I love talking about health. So,
exactly. So anyways, thank you. This is great. The book is great, and definitely recommend that. And so as you're listening, I know this has impacted you. So please share this with another entrepreneur that needs to hear this, because we all need to hear this. We can all do better, right? We're never perfect. Our bodies aren't perfect. And so we can always do better. So if there's one nugget you can pull from this episode or the book or just from their coaching, do so. I really challenge you to do that. So until next week, y'all, God bless. Thank you for listening to the Thriving in Tandem podcast. Please visit our website, marriedentrepreneur.co, for a variety of free resources to help your marriage and business succeed.
And feel free to leave us a review and share this episode with another married entrepreneur. That would mean so much to us.
See you next week.